Officially a sprained finger for Myles Turner. If he doesn't play tonight and going forward, who needs to step up and how for the Pacers? Plus, Obi Toppin, remarkably consistent. What does that mean for the Pacers? And we'll look at Pacers Nets with Alex Golden tonight on the Locked On Pacers podcast.
You are Locked On Pacers, your daily Indiana Pacers podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What up, y'all? Happy Wednesday, and welcome into another edition of the Locked On Pacers podcast, where we, of course, talk about the Indiana Pacers. As always, my name's Tony East. I cover the team for Forbes and SI, and today it's a podcast crossover. Alex Golden from Setting the Pacers is going to join us to talk about all things Pacers going on right now. 6 games to go. Big story, Myles Turner, finger bent the other way on Monday. Sprained right finger, questionable for tonight's game against Pacers Nets. If he can't go, what do the Pacers need to do to still win, to survive in his absence? And what could it mean if he's out beyond that game? What could he look like playing with said injury? Plus, we talk about Obi Toppin. Don't talk about Obi Toppin enough. Remarkably consistent, what that has meant for the Pacers this season. And we close talking Pacers Nets. Can the Pacers finally win 3 games in a row and help themselves continue climbing in the standings? What will it take? Alex Golden going to join us for all that. Let's just get right to it. Playoffs are close. The heavy hitters have been coming on here on Locked On Pacers. It's time for another one. You know him over at Setting the Pace. He's covering every game in person now. It's Alex Golden. Talk about Myles Turner. Hurts his finger. Obi Toppin not getting enough discussion. Pacers, can they actually get a win streak? We'll get to it all today. Alex, first though, how are you? Are you enjoying being at every single game now?
I will say it's a lot of fun. It's totally different. Being there in person for the games, being able to ask questions. And you know what? I feel like I'm getting more comfortable with my surroundings and where to go and what to do, what to say. But I still really get nervous asking questions sometimes. So I've got to break through. Sometimes I feel fine. And then sometimes I just like drop the ball in my head and I'm like, what am I doing? Why am I even asking a question? But I will say it's good practice. It's a lot of fun. And a lot of great people over there, just a lot of nice people in the field house to chat with throughout the game too. Because I don't always just sit there the whole game. I guess I shouldn't always say that, but I have to walk around. I get a little bit ADD there with just sitting down for the entirety of the game.
If I don't procrastinate during the day and I actually get all my work done in time, I am a halftime walker. Also, I can't do it. I had a fumbled question after the Nets game, and I was watching it back today to transcribe, and I was like, oh God, what was that? What was I doing? But hopefully today with you, I get them all right.
I was going to say, I can always tell when you don't like your question because you like start beating yourself up in the moment. You were like sort of
right there in front of them.
You were like, what a dumb question. I was like, I didn't like that one. And then I made it even worse. I mean, I felt like I was speeding up. When I listen back, I'm like, I don't sound as nervous as I feel in the moment, but like my heart starts racing. I'm like, why am I afraid to ask these guys a question? Like, these are some of the nicest players in the league. So, but yeah, anyway, I digress. It's a different dynamic for sure. And it's not as easy as people make it seem to be. Like, it's a lot easier to think of questions when you're at home on your couch than when you're there in person and trying to word them the right way and not upset anybody.
My bad ones are like, I looked at the stat sheet right then, or like I just thought of it and I have it, put together in my head, like what I want to know about. I'm like, oh, you had rebounds. And then it just comes out like that. Basically, it's nonsense. Yeah. Let's actually talk about the basketball the Pacers are playing and need to play for their last 6 games. 6 games. It's so funny. I was thinking about this. Like 6 games, I'm like, that feels like 6 games. But after their game tomorrow, I'll go, oh my gosh, they only have 5 games left. Like that feels like such a big difference. The big story to be, maybe not as big as it could have been, was Myles Turner's finger injury from Monday's game. They ended up dominating, and they were up so big when it happened that it didn't matter that game specifically, but they were up partially so big because he was having a wonderfully good game, especially on defense. And the 5 blocks in 14 minutes, 9 points. He was playing great. And he jammed his finger on the rim, and it was gross. And Tyrese Haliburton couldn't look, and Jarris Walker looked like he just saw somebody like bleeding all over the place. It was very funny to see their reactions to it. He is officially listed as questionable for the next round of Pacers and Nets. Oscar Tshiebwe is with the Mad Ants. I don't think that means anything because the Pacers have been willing to go small, and it's a playoff game. But either way, that is the situation where Myles Turner is at. Questionable is good. It's his shooting hand and pointer finger. That's bad. If he is not able to play, Alex, what to you is the key to make the impact of his loss as small as possible if you're the Pacers?
Yeah, it's a good question. I mean, because obviously he is going to be a big loss. I think Jalen Smith had a really good game last night before he got ejected. 17 and 10 on like 7 of 11 shooting. So like obviously he can kind of do some things similarly to Myles on the offensive end by spreading the floor. But it's going to be a great opportunity for Isaiah Jackson to get some backup minutes. And I feel like this season when we've seen Ijax get those minutes, like maybe there's a game or two where he's not played well, but even when Smith was out for a while, like Ijax did a really good job as the backup 5. So I think that's a really nice luxury the Pacers have. They're having such a very talented third string center that's stayed ready. And I know Rick Carlisle talked about it today on the radio, just like how he has done such a great job. And like this is probably his best year in terms of just staying ready at all times and not letting the no playing time really affect him. So good opportunity for him. But, really the Pacers, I think they're going to have to just be a little bit better defensively on the perimeter because Myles had 5 blocks in the first half. And if these guys don't lock in defensively out there as a team, I like Jalen Smith, and I know they can block shots, same with Ijax, but, there's a reason why Myles is the franchise leader in blocks is what he does well. So I think they're just going to have to shore up their perimeter defense and be a little bit more disciplined and not have as much slippage as Coach Carlisle alluded to after the game.
Yeah, you nailed it. Like Rick talked about it pretty heavily. Like I was pretty surprised after that Nets game. Not that they had a good second half, but he was pretty tonally like down in a way that they smoked them. They were up by 30 points at times in the almost the first half. And he was really disappointed with their second half defense and even partially their first half defense because, Turner had 5 blocks, but that means he had to block 5 shots and rotate over or be involved in a play that he shouldn't have had to be involved in. So the best way to mitigate not having Myles Turner there to get the block is don't let the player get to the shot that Myles Turner can block. And that's an everybody thing, right? That's an engaged defense, which they've had more, especially in March. That was April, so maybe it's a different team now. But in more seriously, like if they can do better at that, like play defense like they did against the Lakers, then that would go a long way into not requiring Jalen Smith to be a stud on defense. But I think they are rotationally okay, right? Like Jalen Smith's been good this season. He's made his shots. Every time Isaiah Jackson plays, I'm like, I can't just tweet that he's playing well because that's all I do. When he plays, it's just like, oh, look, Isaiah Jackson's doing good again. I have confidence, and I think the Pacers do too, that they'll be good enough. It's more about can they be good enough to offset the loss of Turner, right? He's clearly better than both of them. And so like Sticks was killing it against the Nets because he was crushing the glass. 6 offensive rebounds in that game for Jalen Smith, right? He had almost half of all of the Pacers' offensive rebounds. That's going to be really important. Get them extra possessions, give them, because he's not as versatile of an offensive player as Turner, and he is shooting well from 3 on the season, but since the All-Star break, I think he's below 30% from deep. Like he's just not the same level of versatility, but if he can match production by being a beast on the glass or, not being needed as much on defense, that would go a long way because we know that their defense with Jackson can hum. It's can the starters work with Smith and can Jalen Smith and Pascal Siakam replicate some of what Turner and Siakam have? That's where I think the biggest questions will be.
No, and I think it's a great point. I mean, we know like Jalen Smith has shot the ball well this year, but like you said, not shooting it as well since the All-Star break. And really, I think ever since he got injured, that's when it's kind of been downhill for him.
Definitely.
So some ups and downs there. And then if he gets in foul trouble, Isaiah Jackson is also prone to get in foul trouble too. So that could cause them to be a little bit smaller. Nick Claxton, thankfully, is not the biggest center. So I think you can kind of figure it out there if you do get in some foul trouble. But I have always kind of wondered how the fit with Ijax and Pascal would be together more, just because I think Pascal's better with a guy that can spread the floor, where Ijax kind of roams the middle. And I think that does kind of make things a little bit more interesting. And I think honestly, like that might be part of the reason why you're not seeing Jackson as much compared to Smith, just because Smith has been at least a threat from outside this year. And, they're different players for sure, like totally different. So I kind of wonder how that all fit in there together. But yeah, Turner's absence is going to be huge because of what he's done in terms of spreading the floor. He's really been playing a lot better, I feel like, and scoring in different ways. Like his hands have gotten better this year, I feel like, too, taking people off the drive a little bit more too. So, Turner's just clearly the better center of the 3. So just losing a starter like that and someone that Rick Carlisle always puts in now with the Pacers' big 3 when he talks about their big 3, when you lose 1/3 of your big 3, like that's a significant loss.
Yes, he did call them that 2 games ago. I can't remember now.
He said it like 4 or 5 times now. I feel like I've heard.
Yeah, I don't know why the last one hit me different. I just was like, oh, again. The other factor, and I guess the final factor, if there is one, is if Turner does play, it's still like, it's your second most important finger for shooting on your shooting hand. Like it's not going to be easy to just whip him up as often as he does in a typical game. So it's reasonable to assume. I have to shift a lot, everybody. I'm sorry. I'm sitting on the floor. It's reasonable to assume that he could be passing it more or just in general look a little different with the way he's playing on offense. If that's the case, I think that having not 85% Myles Turner is better than him not playing at all. Like, that's the number. And you heard the radio this morning where Carlisle said something to the effect of like pain tolerance will be a factor in him actually playing or not going forward. But if he does play, I think that don't be surprised if he plays and looks a little different. And I think that's okay. They can get enough shots up with the rest of their starters. You've seen that all season, but that would not stun me. I just don't know exactly what that's going to look like for Myles Turner. Is that hiding somewhere else? Is that screening and always rolling so he's not a jump shooter? Maybe that ends up working fine. And maybe the Nets' rim defense is just so bad that that's what they would have done anyway. But that's the other factor here before I get to the other point I want to make about this. But what do you think about that?
Yeah, no, I think that's a good point. I mean, I kind of feel like he almost needs to sit this game out just to continue to allow himself to have rest with that finger, because you don't want him to re-injure it or anything like that and maybe push it too much, because it did look pretty nasty if you saw the picture.
Tyrese reaction says it all. If you could find a video of it. He was like,
and honestly, like, it's the worst case scenario when you're up big against a team that in a game like this, like, it's like, oh, are you kidding me? Like, the worst things always happen, I feel like, to the Pacers, like injury wise, like it's an unnecessary injury, like just so random. Like, that's not something Turner usually has anything happen to him, like a finger injury. I think this might be like one of the first ones I can recall from Turner's career where he's had like a finger injury, maybe a wrist injury before, but nothing like a dislocated finger. So, and with it being on a shooting hand, like that really does impact what he can do and how effective he can be. So if he's playing through the pain, like how effective will he be? I think that's something you have to weigh heavily. But at the same time, I mean, you got to win these games and you can't afford to lose games to teams that you're supposed to beat. So I understand why you want him to play. But to me, it's like if it's too much of a risk where it might like re-injure it or something like that, I would rather him just hold off and try to be as healthy as possible for postseason play where it matters more. But they're already going to make the postseason, just depends on where they're going to make it. I think that's obviously a huge factor too. But I would rather see him healthy than playing, injured and not being his full self, full effective self.
You mentioned the playoffs, and ironically, that's like the final stage of what I wanted to get to with this. If he can't play, I'm not saying, let me be clear. I have to be very careful with how I phrase this. They have to win every game. They can't experiment. So I'm not trying to say they should experiment, but getting more reps with either Obi at the 5 or Pascal at the 5 might not be so bad with the postseason right around the corner, because I don't think that will be the first thing, like big adjustment the Pacers make. Like for some teams, it's really obvious. The Thunder will bench Josh Giddey. The Bucks will get Patrick Beverley more minutes because they need defensive tenacity. Like some of this stuff's obvious. I don't know what the Pacers' like very obvious first big lineup adjustment would be in a postseason series where they're getting their butt kicked. But I've wondered for a while if it would be Siakam at the 5 more or Obi at the 5, even some. And so getting a chance to see that more this late in the season could be of value for the Pacers, I think.
Yeah, no, that's interesting. I mean, we've seen a little bit of Siakam and Obi together. The Suns game really sticks out to me from when they played
did it
together
in the first Nets game because they had to, but
yeah. So, I mean, yeah, that is something that could be interesting. It's just how much are they going to trust in that lineup? And I kind of feel like the margin for error is so slim right now that there really isn't a whole lot of adjustments they can really do, in my opinion, with the lineup they have currently. If you think about changing anything up, I just don't really know what that would be.
Yeah, they can't get to just like, let's try something new. Like that's too precarious at this stage of the season. But if they can iron out or get more reps of something they've already tried or gone to that maybe will work, I see some value in that. To answer the exact question of the lineup we just talked about, with both Siakam and Toppin on, my internet isn't working quick enough here in Gamers Fieldhouse, so I can't tell you the exact minutes, but it's loading. So I will tell you the exact number in a second. This next segment is brought to us by our sponsor, BetterHelp. Sometimes you only need the opportunity to get something off of our chest. Big or small, certain things can really start to get to you. It's important to let that out, especially to someone who is unbiased on your life. So today, I want to say how I really feel about something. You might even be thinking the same thing this week. I want to talk about how good I think G League players are. I don't think people recognize that enough, and I get why people don't watch the G League a ton, but man, are playing in the playoffs right now as I'm speaking. Elfrid Payton, bunch of guys on the Delaware Blue Coats, Ricky Council, Jeff Doughton. These guys are good. These guys are NBA level players just waiting for the right opportunity. And people should watch more G League. It's affordable, it's fun, and the players are fantastic. It's some great basketball. Therapy can be different for everyone. Most of us have bigger problems than our favorite sports teams or the G League, and it's important to get things off your chest every once in a while. If you've been thinking about starting therapy, give BetterHelp a try. It's entirely online, designed to be flexible and suited to your schedule. Visit BetterHelp.com/LockedOnNBA for said therapy, and you can get 10% off your first month. That's BetterHelp, HELP.com/LockedOnNBA. I do want to talk about Obi Toppin. This was a fitting and intentional transition. 140 minutes for the Pacers with those two on the floor together, plus 10 awesome offense, crummy defense. Shocking, the Pacers. Okay, so Obi Toppin, I was going back and thinking about segments I've done about players recently, or the Pacers changes they've made, or guys who have had, wavy results, and why I've talked about them for that. I have not talked about Obi Toppin at all as a basketball player in the last month and a half. And there's a couple reasons for that, I think. But the thing that I want to start with is, I think one thing they did with him that I probably should have talked about more is when they were kind of figuring out their rotation and how they wanted to do Siakam with the bench versus Haliburton with the bench versus both stars versus the rare 0 stars, how they wanted to do it. One of the first things they did was they'd bring Obi Toppin in earlier. He was their first sub often, but he was coming in 6.5 minutes to go in the first quarter sometimes for Siakam, so they could make the decisions from there, whether it was Siakam with the bench with small guys, Haliburton with the bench, Siakam coming back in for Toppin, right? You can see his minutes kind of start fluctuating if you look at his game log in mid-March, where sometimes it would go down to 14 and then up to 19 and then 24 and then 11. It just would bounce all over the place. And so I think it's been interesting that he's kind of ping-ponged around in different lineups and still just been this sounds like a negative, but it's not. He's just met expectations so often that I'm there's not a lot to talk about here. His splits are exactly what they should be. He's reliable in all these lineups, but he was the first little change I noticed when they're trying to figure out their groups as a team. And he just continues to be rock solid. I think that consistency is important for the Pacers. And I thought that he could be a guy that as the season went along, his minutes could go away. Granted, I thought when I thought that originally, I thought it'd be Jarris playing more, and that hasn't been the case. But he's been so rock solid that they can't afford to not play him. He's been really good for them, even since the break.
Very consistent, and that's one thing that's changed a lot. And yes, I think this is sure. And one thing that I think too is big is just, obviously I think it's a team philosophy type thing, because if you look at his numbers, offensive rating, defensive rating, net rating, pre-post or pre-All-Star break, he was a net 0.0. He was 118.9 on offense and defense. But if you look at his numbers now, he's a 121.9 on offense and then a 111.8 on defense, which makes him a 10.2 positive net rating when he's on the floor, which is the second highest net rating of any Pacer. So you can kind of feel that when he's out there, he's been very impactful. And he's not putting up as many points, not playing as many minutes as he was previously, obviously in a different role, but making the most of it.
Siakam took his minutes. That's crazy.
Yeah. But even Jalen Smith did for a little bit there at the end. So, it's one of those things where he's really adjusted and he's just fit in well. And I talked about this a couple episodes ago on our podcast. Is he going to be that guy come the playoffs that has maybe one of those big games? Obviously, you would think Bennedict Mathurin could be one of those guys that could maybe have a breakout game had he been healthy. You always have your stars get you a game or two maybe, but there's always that third guy, that random guy that kind of goes off. And it's is that Obi Toppin for the Pacers? Who else is it going to be? Him or McConnell, something like that. So he's shooting the ball well. I think that's one thing that's been great is his 3-point shooting and how much that's improved all season long. I think it's maybe dipped a little bit percentage-wise since the pre-All-Star, but they're also shooting less threes probably too, based on how they're playing a different style. So I've just been really impressed with him, probably more so than I had been previously, because there were some times defensively I'm like, man, Obi's getting kind of lost here. But I think that the second unit's worked well, and even when he's not playing with Ty, his minutes with McConnell have been pretty good. So it's he's just finding ways to be impactful and not trying to step out of his role with the team and just kind of playing the right role. And I think that he's honestly just been a great teammate.
Yeah, how far he's come since that first preseason game where we're all like, oh, man, Jaren Jackson just put him in a blender for 15 minutes. And now you don't see that stuff kind of happening at all. And some of that stuff he's not going against those guys. But, he's gotten better throughout the season. The thing that has obviously been the most standout thing, and the reason he's exceeded what I thought before the season is, right, the talk rightly, given his history with him, was like perfect stylistic fit, so athletic, can run the open floor, is going to fit great with Ty. He only started with Ty for 2 months, less than that, really.
Yeah.
The thing that made him such a good fit and better than I thought is the threes, right? That's the first story I wrote about him all season, is they kept working with him on slowing down and setting his feet because he would rush it or not be facing the right direction, all sorts of stuff. And so he's at 40% still from three this season, and that has held up, right? That's what I wasn't sure. Is this going to hold? Is this going to be a weapon for him the whole season? Since the All-Star break, 39.2% from three. That sure seems like some consistency. And that's enough now that it's been 70 whatever games. And he's also played in every game, by the way, which I think is something that should be celebrated for any player. But the fact that he's like, it's a consistent thing makes me think, okay, my original thought right before the season of maybe he's the guy that loses minutes and doesn't play in the postseason. That's not the case. Like, he might be important enough that you need to play him in the playoffs because he could be that like guy you said that has a big game like that Hawks game or Sixers game, but also because he can shoot, like he can play in any series and can be valuable for their bench. I think that's been huge that he's kept that up since the break. On the season, his on-off splits are like dead even, right? Plus 2.55 on, plus 2.13 off. Like it's just, this is a rock solid bench player. And it's weird to say that like he isn't talked about because he's so consistent and like beats expectations all the time, but that's part of it. And I think that is noble and now worth discussing.
Yeah, and I think one thing too, you bring up some of those old games that he had, good offensive moments, but I always go back to that Miami game when Ty didn't play and Bruce Brown, I think, had 30 points. Like, he was so good on Jimmy Butler.
Yes, he was.
In that game. And it's like, okay, if he's capable of doing that, can he do that for a game or two in the postseason? Or can he do that for a game or two in the regular season? Like, we've obviously seen it once, but can he do that again where maybe you need him to play a little bit more because someone's in foul trouble or something like that? If Siakam gets in foul trouble, can he go in there and provide some minutes? But, yeah, I mean, honestly, the three-point shooting has been so impressive to me. Like, I think I was telling Caitlin, like, it feels like when he shoots the ball when he's open, it's going in. And that's not something I would have thought I would say about Obi Toppin just from watching him play before. But like, he's become such a reliable 3-point shooter, and his floor spacing is huge, especially for that second unit and what they're trying to do. Because right now, it's pretty much the McConnell show. And I think you talked about how they were staggering those minutes, but it feels like recently they've kind of gotten away from that a little bit more. And it's been like a heavy bench unit with maybe Nesmith in there as the fifth guy. Or, I mean, sometimes they even put Andrew Nembhard in there as the fifth guy. And it's kind of like, all right, McConnell, you kind of run the show. And we'll just play between you and Jalen, or you kicking it out to Obi or Shep's cutting off somebody. So, I think that second unit without Mathurin, they're starting to find their groove a little bit and figure out how everybody kind of fills in. And it's been really enjoyable to watch. But Obi Toppin, I just feel like he's such an interesting player because at the beginning of the year, I wasn't really sure I liked him. I was like, we got to get an upgrade at power forward here if the Pacers really want to be, contenders in the Eastern Conference, even though he didn't play bad during their run to the in-season tournament and had some big shots there too. But I definitely think that he's just kind of found his role and he's sticking in that groove, and it's been really fun to watch.
It helps not to stagger the stars when TJ McConnell's the best isolation player in the NBA for a month and a half.
Is he still leading the league in drives?
I'd have to probably for a minute. I mean, probably it's like every touch he makes. I wrote about that last year. It's just like all he does is turn around and get super low, and like no one can get that low in the league, and they just can't get in front of him.
I don't know how you guard him. Like, it's so funny because it's like he's 6 foot. He shouldn't be doing like what he's doing and how he's hitting shots all the time, but it's just like he just does it. It's like even the defense knows what's happening, and they just can't stop it.
You kind of want to guard it like a big, right, where you're in drop and you don't lunge at him until he gets like 8 feet away, but now he makes the 10-footer 60% of the time. You can't even do that. Last note on Obi too. I don't want to sell this short. 40.1 percent from three is awesome. Way above his season average, is absolutely massive. He's still over 70% from two this season. Like, just everything he's done offensively has been wonderful. Hasn't dropped as his roles changed. Hasn't dropped as his minutes have changed. If you break out his shooting by zone, over 80% at the rim. That's a career high. 52.2% from 3 to 10 feet. That's a career high. 3-point percentage, career high. Doesn't take bad shots. That is the kind of like valuable offensive weapon you have. I don't know what his future is with this team because they have young guys and stars at the four. I don't want to talk about that right now because it's the midst of a push for postseason play, but he's been solid. And I need to talk about Obi Toppin being solid. I'm doing a disservice to the team by not.
Yeah, and that's fair. And I was going to say he is second highest, I think, post All-Star break in field goal percentage, with only Isaiah Jackson being above him. And we know that Isaiah Jackson's 95% of his shots, it feels like, come at the rim. So, I mean, 58.6% is pretty incredible for Obi Toppin, and that's including his 3-point percentage being mixed in there too with his field goal percentage. So, just really good efficiency from Obi Toppin, and his true shooting percentage is 69.0, which is second on the team too. So that to me just like, wow, he's shooting the ball well right now.
Yes, 5 players in the NBA are shooting better than 65% on twos. Do you know who they are? You don't. I'm going to tell you them. I did not expect you to know that, to be right. It is Ivica Zubac, Rudy Gobert, Mo Wagner, Obi Toppin, and Daniel Gafford. Those last two, Toppin and Gafford, being the only two over 70%. It's a good company to be in with a guy who made, 34 shots in a row at one point this season. So that's the level Toppin's inside the arc efficiency is at. More break here, guys. Let's talk about GameTime, the fastest and easiest way to get tickets to your favorite events. I should know because I used it in New York to get tickets to Liberty versus Wings game, and it was fantastically easy. GameTime is now an authorized ticket marketplace of Major League Baseball, which makes getting tickets even faster and easier. They've got killer last-minute deals, all-in prices, views from receipt, their lowest price guarantee. GameTime takes all the guesswork out of buying tickets to everything, including, of course, those MLB games, last-minute tickets, flash deals, zone deals. Those are all special. I love seeing the view from receipt. All-in prices right on there. The lowest price guarantee. If you find tickets cheaper elsewhere, they'll credit you the difference. Everything about buying tickets on GameTime is how this process should be. You save money. You know what you're getting. There's no guesswork. There's nothing that can go wrong, and your purchase is covered with the most flexible customer service policy in the ticketing industry. Take the guesswork out of buying tickets with GameTime. Download the GameTime app, create an account, and use the code LOCKEDONNBA for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account, redeem the code LOCKEDONNBA for $20 off. Download GameTime today. Last minute tickets, lowest price guaranteed. Last thing I want to get to today, Alex. This sounds crazy to say, and it's a little, let me be clear, this is a little misleading. Since the All-Star break, the Pacers have not won 3 games in a row. Technically, they won their first 2 games coming out of the All-Star break and their last game going into the break. So that is 3 games in a row, and that is their last 3-game win streak. That's a month and a half ago now. Before the break, they had that one at home right before Haliburton came back, which was like a saving grace stretch of their season. Now, at their best, they had that stretch where they won, 9 out of 11, 10 out of 11, I think, or 9 out of 10 from late December or January, and they've never found that consistency since. Tonight, probably opponent-wise, schedule-wise, their best chance at 3 in a row. Key time on the calendar. If they win either of their games this week, it guarantees their game Sunday against the Heat is they'll still control their own destiny for 6th entering that game. Like this would be the time to do it. So 2 questions. 1, why don't you think the Pacers have been able to string together 3 wins in a row? And 2, is tonight the night? Is it gonna change? I don't want you to make a game prediction, but that for all the bad teams they've struggled with, they have done well against the Nets. I'll say that.
I will answer the second part of your question first. This is one of the best opportunities for them to do that. Like you said, the Nets are not a good team right now. And if you watch their defense
just right now.
Well, you know what I mean. What are they playing for? They have no playoffs to play for. They have no draft picks to tank for. So they're kind of like, let's just go out there.
I predict the Nets to make the playoffs. I thought they'd be so good on defense. I'm embarrassed.
Yeah.
They're terrible.
Yeah, I didn't really know what to think of this Nets team, but I will say this: the only thing that I'm a little bit worried about is my co-host will be in the building for the game, and the Pacers have not won a game since like 2020, since when he's in the building. So that's the only thing that I think is going to kind of maybe be against the Pacers. And obviously Turner status, I do think has somewhat of an impact, but no, I think this is a great opportunity for them to just win 3 in a row. And honestly, why not win more than 3 in a row? Let's keep the win streak going. But part of the reason why I think it's because they've just been so inconsistent as a team shooting wise too. That's a big thing for me. Like their outside shooting has been so hit or miss. Like we've seen a lot of like 5 for 30 games from this team. And, honestly, Tyrese has not strung together a lot of consistent play. Like if he was consistently what he was before, when you talked about like they won like 9 out of 10 or something like that. Yeah, obviously you feel a lot better about them winning games, but he's been going through these stretches where it's like, okay, he had a good game here shooting wise. The next game he's like 4-13 or 0 of 9 from 3. It's like hard to win those games when your best player is not performing as your best player. And then Pascal, Siakam, and TJ McConnell are kind of carrying the load for this team and hoping that you can just kind of get contributions from everybody else. So I think it's just been a level of inconsistency from this team overall. And one thing that I've hated hearing Carlisle say is like our level to compete, like our compete level wasn't good enough. If your compete level is not good enough at this point in the season, I think that's a bit worrisome. So
Yes,
it's time to lock in and
for sure.
no more excuses. It's like you can't be like, oh, we just overlooked this bad team. No, you can't do that. You can't overlook bad teams. You got 6 games left, and every game it really matters. And I call this game a must win. Honestly, I really do think it is a must win. Looking at the rest of the schedule too.
I can give you that. I mean, they only are going to be playing. Like Brooklyn might be trying because technically they haven't been eliminated from the play-in yet. But like, come on, they only have one more game against a team that's fate is sealed for the season. It's the Raptors, who actually probably want to lose because they want to finish at least 6th in the lottery. Every other team's playing for something, at least as of now. We'll see what that means. So this could be one of their last, like I said this to Dustin Pierre right before their last Nets game. Like, if I'm a player on the Nets, we don't have our draft pick and we're not going to make the playoffs. Like, it would take me this may say a lot about me as a person too. Like, it probably takes so little for you to check out in the game, right? Like, if you go down 15 the first half, you're like, whatever, who cares? Like, I got my contract for next year. So I agree with you in that case, but we've seen this a lot. Like, exactly this. Come out of the break, beat Detroit, beat Dallas, nice win over the Mavs, riding a high, chance to win 3 in a row. Raptors in town.
Yeah,
fall flat on your face. Not 3 in a row there. Then they win 2 straight in Orlando, beat OKC, come back home, play in the Bulls, up 3 with 3 seconds to go. Don't win that one either, right? Like, every time they've had a chance, beat Detroit, beat Golden State, go to LA, score 145, still lose. They just haven't been able to do it. And they can't afford that anymore, right? They're at 5 games left after this. Like, that is, the margins are over. It's every game is 20% of your season. Like, they need to string it together. Here's what I think. I said this when I was talking with Rep Bauer about why our theories are that the Pacers are such an inconsistent team. It was that for a while, at least, their peak of offense was so high and their defense was so low that just gives you such a wide variance. Like, other teams like that, Dallas, Sacramento, Atlanta, have been similar in that they have crummy losses and high peaks. Right now, guess what? Dallas is defending great, and they've won a gazillion games in a row when Luka Doncic plays. The reason I think tonight's the night, I make a lot of bad predictions, so maybe that's not a good thing. The reason I think tonight's the night is because they're defending better. They didn't play awesome defense in the second half of that Monday's Nets game. Rick Carlisle didn't like that. But I think their level of defense in March specifically, what they've been getting to on that end of the floor, is enough that if they give the requisite level of effort and energy and they're ready to go on the road, right after there's only 2 more road games, then I think they'll defend well enough that they will get that 3rd win in a row and guarantee that Sunday is as epic as it gets in the NBA.
One thing I will say, the Pacers have been playing better on the road. They've won 6 of their last 8 on the road. So hopefully that kind of lets them get a little bit more focused. And I don't think what Rick Carlisle did was not intentional with his displeasure with their defense in the second half. Obviously, when you're up by 30 points against a team that you're really not trying that hard, like, yeah, they were trying, whatever, but like the Nets were not trying that hard. They were pretty checked out, like you said. And you could just tell, like, it didn't feel like a very like competitive game at all. Like, even in the second half, like, yeah, the Nets were kind of scrapping a little bit more, but still, it just didn't ever feel like it was going to get close. So I think that Rick Carlisle is basically just saying, like, you guys can't take your foot off the gas whatsoever. Like, you are not good enough. And he kind of alluded to that. I think it was against the Lakers after the game. He was like, we're not talented enough to win on talent alone. Like, we have to win collectively. So to me, like, when I hear him say things like that, I think he's trying to really get across to them, like, you're not the Nuggets. You're not, one of these teams that can take your foot off the gas for a second and afford to lose a game. Like, every game matters, and we have to get better every game, because if we want to make an impact in the playoffs, like, there's no margin for error. There's no room to screw up and, oh, I should have been better on that play. Like, yeah, you're going to have mess ups, obviously, but like, you got to hold them accountable. You have to hold, Tyrese, to the last player on the roster, Kendall Brown, accountable when they're out there on the court, because I think that the accountability is going to go a long way. And you've seen this team grow the last 3 years since Carlisle's been here. Like, his hard coaching style, I think, is it's a really positive thing to me, because I think these guys respond well to it. And I think he knows the right buttons to push at the right times. It's just, he's been around long enough that he knows, like, it's buckle down time. So I'm hoping you're right. Their defense needs to continue to stay better, as it has proven to be better over the last month or so. So they're trending in the right direction. And I'm hoping that their defense can continue to help them win games, because their offense, we've seen their offense before and how dynamic it can be, but you can't win games like Rick Carlisle said. Like, we're not playing hot girl basketball all the time anymore. We're playing more. We're playing more of a balanced style, and I think that's what the Pacers really need to do to continue to have success.
3rd and 4 nights for the Nets. They were talking about this before the last game, Kevin Ollie was, which I enjoyed. I think their last flight of the season was to and from Indy. Their last 2 road games are against the Knicks, which is the same city, and the Sixers, which is a train. So maybe fatigue kicks in. Maybe that's just Pacers copium. Who knows? We'll see it all happen tonight. Tomorrow here on Locked On Pacers, we'll be talking about that game, what happened, how they adjusted without Turner, if he didn't play. If he did, great. How did he look? What did he look any different? What does that mean for the rest of their season? Did they win? Did they not win? And probably the last standings watch of the season, depending on what happens next week. Next week is probably going to be every day because every game is going to change everything so dramatically. And Alex, I am assuming you will cover many similar things where you covered the Pacers. Why don't you tell people about that so they can also listen to you and your co-hosts and many guests cover the Indiana Pacers?
Yeah, so my co-host will actually be at the game, like I said, so he will not be joining me for the post-game podcast because it's a bit of a haul there for him to get to the game. So I'll be joined by Combo from Combo's Court to recap the game.
Nice.
So a lot of fun. I know you guys did a live podcast in Indianapolis when he was here. Were you guys in Westfield? Was that where you guys were recording that?
We were on the north side of Indy.
Okay, so you guys were did a live in studio podcast during All-Star Weekend. So enjoyed watching that. And Combo's just a funny guy. So I've been on his show a few different times, but he's going to come over to set in the pace and recap this game with me. So it's kind of nice to get an outsider's opinion of someone that doesn't cover this team on the norm to kind of get what their thoughts are on this game, obviously. Hopefully the Pacers get a victory, like you said. But other than that, we'll have that. And then I think Chris Denari will be joining us the following night. Yeah. So always enjoy having Chris Denari, Mr. 2000, right? Got 2000 career broadcasting games for Pacer Sports and Entertainment. So always enjoy having him on the show. But yeah, it's a lot of fun, a lot of things to talk about, and a lot of playoff standings watch. I mean, that's pretty much what it is every night. Tuesday night's a big night, so I'm not sure if you're going to be able to update that in the intro before.
It's too early. It's too early.
But yeah, big games tonight between the Knicks and the Heat. And then Phil, is that right? Knicks Heat?
Knicks Heat. Philly's playing. Embiid's back. The Heat are starting at 3 and 4 nights. They play the Sixers later this week. The Magic schedule is not a joke anymore, finally. So yeah, it's
Philly's playing OKC tonight. That's right. So a lot of important games for the Pacers.
No J-Dub. I checked out on that very quickly. Whatever. Not interesting.
Yeah. Well,
when you have Mr. 2000 on, I would like to ask you to ask him about his very, very, very first broadcast.
Okay.
Because I saw him the night of the 2000 and he was telling me about it, and it is a very good story.
Okay.
Hearing about it.
I will have to.
I assume that would come up anyway, but it is a good story. Chris Denari, the best. Yes. Listen to Setting the Pace. Alex crushes it over there. Like I said, fun stuff coming tomorrow after Pacers Nets. One of the last games I won't be at for the Pacers all season. It will be weird being at home, but it is what it is. Thank y'all for listening. Have a wonderful day. See you soon.